Hi friends, welcome to Tasty Tuesday. And this is from my Better Homes and Garden cookbook from 1984. I had this cookbook before I was married and enjoyed making this recipe even before I was married. It calls for 1 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 1/4 teaspoons baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon baking soda, 2/3 cup sugar, 1/3 cup shortening, 2 eggs, 2 tablespoons milk, 1 cup of mashed ripe banana, which is about 2 small bananas, and an optional 1/4 cup chopped nuts. I enjoy this with a cup of coffee, and I have given this for Christmas gifts sometimes to neighbors. Now, I probably have showed you, whoops, as you can see, my oven just went off. This is from the Better Homes and Gardens recipe on page 79 of their 1984 paperback version. I had this one before I was married. And the first step is to set our oven at 350 and start preheating the oven. Now the action on this video is going to be right over here in my KitchenAid stand mixer. That's what I'm going to be using. The first step in this recipe is to measure out 1 3/4 cups of flour. So I have 1 cup of flour here, and I'm going to actually put this in a bowl because what you do is you will be putting a little flour into an egg and shortening and sugar mixture with the bananas. So I have my 1 cup, and now I'm going to put another 3/4 cups in that bowl and set it aside for later. And there, I have the 3/4 cups. Okay. Next, I'm going to probably measure out my dry ingredients again with the sugar. This recipe calls for 2/3 cup sugar. So I'm going to put my lid on my flour, and there's my sugar. Anyway, I'm going to get my sugar out of my canister. Look and see animals. Well, that was something nice. Mazda was getting Morse out of the kitchen because he was being very pesty over here. Not where I wanted him to be. And I just fed them hoping that that would be destructive enough, but it wasn't. But anyway, here's my 2/3 cup of sugar. I think just a little bit more in here. And as you can see, 2/3 cup of sugar. I probably can have just a pinch more. There we go. 2/3 cup of sugar. So I'm going to set that aside for right now. This recipe also calls for shortening, baking soda, and baking powder. And so I have those dry ingredients out too at hand right now. So now I need to open my new can of Crisco. I am so glad I got this. I wasn't sure I needed shortening the other day, and then when I got home, my shortening was out of date, so I was so happy I had bought this because it just had gone out of date in February. So that was really nice. So now I have my nice can of shortening, and I need, I believe it's 2/3 cup. I'm going to go and look. I'm glad I looked. It's 1/3 cup. And so I'm going to get out my 1/3 cup measuring spoon. which you're just going to have to believe me that this is 1/3 cup. And I'm going to just actually just use it itself as a scoop. I have a scoop in there. You can see there's a little in the hole there. Just to even it out, just for purposes I would know that this is okay in my own cooking, but I'm going to just pat it down a little bit and know that I have a little more than I want right here. And that's absolutely fine, because this has to go into my pan. And so I'm going to set this aside for just a few minutes here. Get my sugar closer to the camera because it works on the top tripod there. And that tells me that my oven is hot, so whenever I'm ready, it's going to be ready. So hang on. Okay, so I take a bread pan and I'm going to use that little extra bit of shortening. I'm just kind of scoot it right here. And my little trick and tip is I take the clean side of a paper napkin, because my hand, it's a lot more cleanly than my hand. And I'm going to just grease that pan a little bit, not too much. I see a little on the sides, too much here. But the nice thing is, whatever excess I have, I will just take out with this paper towel. And now I'm going to put it in my wastebasket. And I'm going to set that aside for just a minute. And I'll be right back. This recipe calls for 2 eggs. So now I have a little custard cup that I'm going to break those into. And then I think I'll be just about ready with everything I need. So there's 1 egg. Here is my 2nd egg. There's 2 eggs all ready to go in. So I'm going to turn off the camera again just to double check that I have everything I need before I proceed. Closing my lid there. The next step is I'm going to measure the rest of my dry ingredients. I'm going to put my baking powder and baking soda right in with my flour. So I have 1 teaspoon, and 1/4 of baking powder that this recipe requires. And then it also requires 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda for the leavening for this. Now, yeast breads use yeast, but quick breads use such things as baking powder and baking soda. And this one is just not quite as full as I want it to be, but I think it'll be okay. So that's that. All right, and I got a little bit over here, but I think we should be okay. It was just a dusting. All right, so that takes care of all of my dry ingredients. They're all in this little handy dandy bowl. There's one chief thing that I need for banana bread. And that is a couple of very ripe bananas. These are a little riper than I usually use, so, but they'll still do the trick. And so I'm going to carefully take them off this. And mash these bananas in this bowl that I have here. So I have a bowl here, and so I peel the bananas carefully and put them in the bowl. And that's what I'm going to do right here, right now. So we're peeling the bananas. And putting them in the bowl. I'll be right back. Okay, right now I'm working through a little Meniere's buzzing, but I have my bananas, and now I take a masher and I mash these bananas. Now, normally, I do the step with the bananas first, and I get my pan ready first. And I have it only halfway ready right now. My second step is, with getting this pan ready, is I take a little bit of flour, like about a little spoonful, and I put it in my pan. And set this down. And then I just prep the pan with the flour like this. Now, I got the idea of doing this is because there was a 20-something-year-old person that I watch and follow who was having trouble making banana bread. And she was using like a cake pan to do it. Then I noticed her mother showed her how to make a recipe, and that recipe was different. It had brown sugar, which I haven't ever used. But I'm going to do something kind of crazy here. I'm going to put a little bit of this flour into my mixture that's left because I don't want to waste anything. And I was a little shy on some of my leavening. So I've got this all ready for the batter when it's finished. Now, so I set that aside. So normally I do the bananas and get the pan prepped before I start anything. Now, I'm going to go over the ingredients with you. I have dry ingredients right here, which consists of flour, baking soda, and baking powder. I believe it was 1 3/4 cups of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 1/4 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 1/4 teaspoons, 1/2 teaspoon, 1 3/4 cup flour. Then we have the 1/3 cup shortening, 2/3 cup sugar, the eggs, and the bananas. There's one missing ingredient, which is 2 tablespoons of milk, which I'm going to put in after I put these ingredients together. So that's our next step. This recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of milk, and yeah, I use whole milk. I grew up with 2%. My husband sometimes has to use it, but we use so little milk that it's probably okay. I don't have a cholesterol problem at all. Sometimes my husband does watch his a little bit, but we have found that this seems to be doing the trick. To just practice moderation. So now I have that done. I'm going to stop it? I have my spatula, and I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to just make sure I scoop the sides. Because what happens is the shortening and sugar did not mix real well with the eggs. There was some at the sides as it was beating. But that sugar is into that mixture pretty well. So we're just making sure that the eggs and sugar and shortening are mixed nicely into a nice little batter. So now I scoop the sides, and we're ready for that next step. And run it a little bit higher so that it mixes well. And quickly. And that should be good. I'll just check it a little bit. And you can see maybe that it's coming up pretty smooth, a little bit of consistency in it, a little bit. But overall, it's a nice thin batter. Spoon aside for a second. I have to wash my hands a little bit because I just touched something. And so now the next step. What you do is you put a little bit of the bananas, a little bit of the flour. You alternate them. So first I'm going to add the flour, then I'm going to add a little banana. So first round. Dry ingredients. Then you alternate with the bananas. Some more dry ingredients. dry ingredients. I think this time I'm just going to finish the dry ingredients. Sometimes I take littler bits than I did today, but we'll hurry it along a little bit. It should be okay. And finally, the last bit of the banana. And we make sure that we get as much of that banana as possible. Put it down one more time. Now, it's time to check this batter a little bit. And again, use my spatula. Scoop down the sides, make sure everything's getting mixed well. Sure I get as much batter off my spoon. I'm going to put my spatula right there for now because it's all going to be okay if I get a little more bananas in here. In fact, I am going to purposely try to get a little dab more banana in as I mix it one more time. Now, I'm going to do the batter one more time. Making sure I scrape the bottom good. Sometimes there's some that catches in the bottom and then it doesn't get mixed well. And we're going to make sure today we didn't do that. This time. Sure it's off my beater. Well, I'm gonna plug this for safety. And remove this, hopefully. I've been having trouble with this one for some reason today. There we go. That should do it. There we go. I don't know why it's not working real great today. wash my hands yet again because now I've got batter all over them. At least you can have some hand soap in the kitchen. Okay, so now I'm going to show you what this looks like. What you want it to look like is something like this. So I'm going to be putting that in my pan, and I'll show it to you in my pan before I put it in the oven. After using every bit of batter that I could, it is ready to go in the oven for, it says 60 to 65 minutes. I'm going to be putting this little banana bread in for 65 minutes because my oven temperature seems to work better that way. It's in the oven. I set my timer for 65 minutes and we will have banana bread in 64 minutes and counting. It's time for me to take a little break, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, and I'll maybe show you what this looked like.